Alright, so we're checking out the SpeedyBee FLEX25 Cinewhoop. So this is kind of a interesting, innovative design in my opinion. A lot of new stuff that we haven't seen before in a lot of other Cinewhoop models. And I don't know if you guys are going to like it or not. I think, for most people that don't like change, you're probably not going to like it. You just want to stick with your 3-inch squirt or whatever you've been flying for the last 3 years. Maybe you want to stop watching this video if you don't like looking at new stuff, but this has got some different things going on here. Some things that I thought I was kind of skeptical about, but I'm kind of surprised that things are working as well as they do. So let me talk about all the things that what I mean here by things that surprised me. So this is a 2.5-inch Cinewhoop with the name, obviously the name 25 is indicating with 2.5-inch propellers, but it's got a 78mm wheelbase. And you're like, well, how's that possible? Well, they did a little trick here where they have staggered the motors. So as you can see, the motor to motor distance is 78mm, and that means that the props overlap. Where you're like, well, how can this thing fly if the props are overlapping? Well, they are staggering the motors. So one motor is at this height here, and then one is a little bit lower, and they've done it on the corners, opposite corners here. So basically, if you're looking at the way the Betaflight looks at the motors, it would be motors 2 and 3. They have this spacer here that increases the length of the distance of where the motor mounts to the main plate here, and that allows for the props to be at different heights, and you can have them spinning and not crashing into each other. And so what that does is it gives you the thrust or the power of the 2.5-inch propeller in a smaller wheelbase or smaller form factor. And this is mainly to go into like these tighter shots, tighter spaces. I don't know if it's going to be that much of an advantage. Obviously, this is going to be for those of you that are flying in very tight spaces and need the smallest possible wheelbase or width distance while still maintaining that power of a 2.5-inch propeller. So on here, the side-to-side distance on the duct is about 135mm across. And just comparing this is the KT20, I think, from HGLRC. This has 2-inch propellers, and it has almost the same side-to-side distance, about 130mm side-to-side. So when you look at this, you basically have the power of 2.5-inch propellers and the thrust that goes with it, and the form factor of a 2-inch Cinewhoop. So that's the trade-off you're making here. And just, for comparison to the Pavo 25 that I reviewed last week, this one is about 160mm side to side, so significantly wider when you look at it in terms of the space, side to side space that the Cinewhoop is using in terms of like the kinds of things you might be flying through. So yeah, these actually have the same size motor and kV as the Pavo 25, the 1404 4500 kV motors. And just looking at the motor here, yeah, there he is, 1404 4500 kV, SpeedyBee branded. I don't know if this is a rebrand of another motor. They all kind of are looking similar. Kind of reminds me of maybe a Diatone 1404 motor. It's possible they're rebranding it. Hard to say, and of course they aren't telling me where they're getting this motor from, probably for obvious reasons. They don't want to disclose that to the public. But as you can see here on the bottom side, because the way the props are overlapping and everything, they put this little carbon protector plate here for the all-in-one flight controller. So this is a new part that is not on the SpeedyBee website yet. They'll probably put it up later. This is the F745 all-in-one whoop size flight controller. So it's an F745 or F7 CPU with 45 amp ESCs and they have the BlueJ firmware on them, so they're running RPM filter. The gyro on mine is the MPU 6000. The pitch tune on this is really good, and this is, it goes into why I thought it was just very surprising, because with these props overlapping, I would think that there'd be a lot of extra turbulence and causing problems with stability, but I didn't experience any of that, and that's the thing that kind of surprised me, and it was unexpected. I thought there would be more instability. In fact, it actually feels more stable, and it did look at the pitch tune. The pitch tune has, a fair amount of filtering in it, and all that, but I have a feeling that because the gyros are going away, the tune's going to change later when the BMI 270 gyros go into these flight controllers. So I have a feeling that my experience with this PID tune is probably outdated already by the time you see this video. Who knows? I don't know if they have a large supply of those or not. Of course, they never tell any of us that information anyway. So I don't know if you're going to get the MPU 6000 gyro or the BMI 270 gyro. I would imagine they're probably going to adjust the PID tune for that gyro, so it's going to be a little bit different. But at least on my setup here, I was expecting a lot more turbulence, a lot more instability, and I didn't experience that. So I thought that was interesting. Because I always felt like on some other ones, like on the Pod 25, where the motors are further apart, it felt a little bit more stable. But then again, Beta FPV and their PID tuning people aren't the greatest in the world compared to some others. Same with HGLRC and their PID tunes on like this 2-inch. This actually felt less stable than this guy here. So yeah, with this staggered motor setup here, I was skeptical. I didn't think it would be viable, but I think it's going to be okay. And for those guys that want to fly in narrow spaces and need really good control, this is pretty decent. I think it'll work. A few other things that are new and different about this one here. So you got this LED strip. It's optional, that goes all the way around. And here, let me just go ahead and turn it on and show you how bright it is. So there's a 12-volt BEC here with a switch on it. So right now it's turned off. And you can turn it on if you want. And yeah, my camera is probably way overexposed now. But you can see it is super, super bright. In fact, so bright that you will see it in your FPV view, even in daylight. It's kind of crazy bright. So I'm not sure how it's going to affect you in terms of your flying ability, but you're definitely going to get noticed if you're flying in the dark. If you want to get noticed or stand out, do light painting, whatever, this is super bright. But it is optional. It's not included. You can buy that as a separate add-on, and it just sticks to the duct. Now this is what the duct looks like. They sent a separate one here without the LED on there. As you can see, it's got a little curve to it on the lip that's bringing the air in, the intake. So I'm not sure if that helps the stability or not. I'm not an aerodynamics engineer, but I suppose that doesn't hurt to have a little bit of a curve there in terms of the air intake. Now they're saying that this is plastic is very strong. It's made of quote unquote car bumper material, which I believe is just ABS plastic. So yeah, those are the guys that are always worried about Cinewhoop prop guards breaking. I don't think what's going to break is the prop guard. It's probably going to be this where this standoff here connects to the prop guard. This is metal. This is an M2.5 screw and standoff, and you got that screw going through here. So what it's probably going to break is, if it breaks, it's going to break at this point here where the metal and the plastic meets, if you have a really hard crash. Yeah, I think those metal standoffs are also in the front here. These two, you have these two on the sides right here, and then two should be in the back here. Yeah, there's two in the back, and that's what's basically holding the prop guard in place, keeping the props from hitting anything. Now there's obviously with the LED lighting on here, if you put foam on the outside to cover that up, that's going to get rid of the LEDs. So, but if you don't have the LED on here, then you could probably, if you want something a little bit like softer, you can probably put some foam on here like you do on some of these other models where they have foam attached to the outside for the bumpers. All right, so moving on, a few more things here that are kind of new and different. So they have this little connector right here, and I think it's a 6-pin connector. And you can see they have some plugs here for different cameras. This one here is for the Runcam thumb, as you can see. And they have other ones for like a naked GoPro 6 and 7 and 8. And also, I think there's one that'll work with the Peanut, I believe. So there's a lot of different options. Basically, if you look at the pinouts for that plug, for the connector, there's one that goes to battery voltage, one that outputs 5 volts. And then the other 3, there's several other pins here like for camera controls. So some of these, if you want to use it to control your GoPro and start and stop recording, those are all pre-wired. So this is a nice little innovative thing that I like. Hopefully we'll see more of this in other new models where things are kind of pre-wired, and then they supply you a bunch of connectors for different cameras, and you can just put on your mount or whatever camera you want to use on there, without having to worry about how do I wire up my naked GoPro or whatever. That's a common problem with a lot of Cinewhoops, so that's a really good idea. On this flight controller, they're using a USB-C connector there, and there's no other USB connection to this flight controller. But do note that on this one, for whatever reason, you have to have the battery plugged in if you're going to be using the USB-C. What I would use is the Bluetooth on here instead. So you plug in the battery and then connect to the flight controller via Bluetooth on the SpeedyBee app. Of course, this is all SpeedyBee stuff, so why not? Use that, and it works great. You can just connect directly to there and change your PIDs or whatever, any settings you want. But if you want to connect to Betaflight, you have to use the USB-C port and have a battery connected. I think, for whatever reason, this flight controller requires that, and I thought that was odd, but that's just the way that it came. So they did send along some additional 3D parts here for conversion to add a Vista in the back here. Right now, this one here is just analog only, has I think it's all SpeedyBee parts. This is where they put a receiver. So they sent along a crosswire receiver on this one here. I think they have a crosswire version of this one, and also a plug and play with no receiver. But for some reason, the one they sent me, the crosswire receiver, wasn't working. Not really sure why. So I replaced it with an Express LRS receiver, and I just put one back here. Yeah, I've been having some issues with crosswire receivers lately. I don't know why. They won't firmware update. Yeah, it's bizarre. I'm not really sure what's going on. I've had 3 now that basically don't bind anything. Anyway, so yeah, so I just basically moved over to an Express LRS receiver and works totally fine. But yeah, if you want to see a conversion to DJI Vista on this one, I can make a video on that. Let me know in the comments. Shouldn't be terribly difficult. Yeah, I think it goes in vertically here, and then you just run the camera to the front. Alright, so let's see how much this weighs. It's going to be a little tricky getting this on here. And let me get the thumb out of here. And by the way, this was not included, this little mount. This is something I created. If you guys want to buy this, let me know. It's available for purchase. I'll be printing those out and selling those. But yeah, this is with the mount. And it's coming in about 48 grams. And then I flew with this 900 milliamp hour 4S battery. So let's just throw that on there along with the Runcam thumb and everything. Let's see here. Okay, great, that works. 246 grams all up weight. Now they're saying that with a 4S 850, you can get about a 5-minute flight time. The digital version, and about 8-minute flight time on the analog version. On this 900, I got roughly about 7.5 minutes of full flight time on this one with the Runcam thumb. So obviously your mileage may vary, depends on how you're flying and also the wind conditions, etc. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and leave you with the stabilized gyro flow footage from the Runcam thumb. And yeah, I did try and fly this with my naked GoPro as well. My naked GoPros are having some issues lately. I think I've crashed them too much. They don't record. They record some of the flight and then they stop like in like the middle. So in fact, I probably showed you some of that flight footage already, and over the DVR footage from the analog video. So I'm just going to show you the footage, the stabilized footage from the Runcam thumb at this point. But that's going to do it for this one. Let me know what you guys think of all the sort of innovations here, some new stuff that's going on with this model that we haven't seen in other models. Maybe we'll see this as a trend in some other, probably some other vendors are going to probably pick up on this and try it out on their upcoming models. But I'm up for it. I think it's, I for one like it when these manufacturers try new stuff. Sometimes they hit it out of the park. Sometimes it's a strikeout. You never know. I think like the smaller wheelbase here with the bigger motors and bigger props, I think it'll work if it's got the proper tuning in it. I think it's got to have the proper PID tuning. So really it's going to depend on the manufacturer that does it. Some of them don't really do good PID tuning or no PID tuning at all, in which case you might have issues if you're just flying this on default Betaflight PID tunes. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video. I'll talk to you guys in the next one.